So let me start by acknowledging the presence of Dr. Posa in our midst. It is a real honor for this university and for myself, having grown under his mentorship, direct and indirect, especially in the years when I was at UNISA, virtually every single year when you were the chairperson of council at UNISA, I was at UNISA. Yeah. So we come a long way, but I've always been a few steps behind you and learning from you. It really is an honor for us to have you at the Tshwane University of Technology. I also wish to acknowledge our chairperson of council, who is playing the role that you were playing when I was at UNISA here at the Tshwane University of Technology, Mr. Ivan Kambonani. He also happens to have been influenced by you in other ways, being a lawyer himself. I tried to introduce him to you and you said, no, don't bother, I know him. We know each other. I was told that Mr. Pakiso Mutau is here, the deputy chair, but I haven't seen him. There are other members of council in our midst. I won't mention them one by one. I was told that Mr. Sipoma Luleke would make it, but I don't think he has made it. Maybe he will join us in the middle of this program. I see several members of the Executive Management Committee of the university. I see Dr. Tlale, I see Dr. Ntangeni, I see Professor Van Veek, I see Professor Dr. Vati, the DVC for research. I see Dr. Mabote. I see, and I'm very thankful to see so many members of the executive. Some members of the Institutional Management Committee have driven for 300 kilometers to be here. I saw the rector of our Limpopo campus. Raise your hand and show your face. There he is. He's come a long way. The student leadership is here. I believe that members of the ISRC, including the President General and the General Secretary, are here. I haven't seen them in person. And also representatives of the student faculty councils. There are also students who have come here who are studying journalism and integrated communication. They are particularly interested to engage with you, Dr. Posa. Some come from public management, and there is an applied languages book club present here. There's a library book club and a writing book club. All these are student clubs who have come to listen to you. Thank you, Dr. Posa, for allowing us to designate your book the VC's Book of the Month for the month of June 2025. I wouldn't be able to find words with which to thank you for taking South Africans into your confidence the way you have done in this bold book that you penned. This is such an opportune time, or rather this at such an opportune time in the history of our country. Such a momentous literary intervention as the current political memoir of yours is of course not new to Dr. Posa. As already mentioned by Professor Nalini, in 1996, when our democracy was 3 years old, Dr. Posa produced such a literary tour de force that even Madiba was in awe, namely the Afrikaans anthology of poems, Deur die Oog van 'n Nald. And 10 years later, in 2015, he achieved the same feat with yet another poetic anthology in English titled Chants of Freedom. 10 more years later, here we are, gathered to celebrate a book that is taking the country by storm, namely Dr. Posa's Witness to Power. And I'm sure I haven't mentioned all your publications. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to do the ones that are separated by 10 years between them. Let us start with the backstory, the human story, because I am supposed to do two things, introduce you and also say a few things about the book before your own intervention. The backstory and the human story. I would have liked to try to do something probably impossible. That is to try not to introduce the Dr. Matthew Posa that we have known for many years along the lines I've already sketched, but to try and bracket and block out the noise of what and how we have known him so that we focus on the Posa that is in this book, which we are gathered to talk about today, the book that summoned us here, if you like. Although the Posas originate from Butlokwa in Limpopo, Nakedi Matthews Posa was born in the erstwhile Mbombela Township, an overcrowded location outside Nelspruit, where his parents had settled. I didn't know what Mbombela means until I read this book. I didn't realize that it means a place where people are just too many. Gandlanan in my language. That's what it means. Dr. Posa is the third of 6 siblings, 2 of whom I think have already passed on in their youth, sadly. He is married to Yvonne Habile, also known as Pinky. In fact, in the book, the name that is used to refer to her is that one, with whom he went on to have 4 children. In 2020, the Posa family, and I quote, suffered the most painful trauma when our beloved daughter Muyahabo passed away after a long illness. Dr. Matthew Posa's mother, Rishoketri Posa, used to be an industrious woman whom he describes as a woman whose laughter filled the village. To bring her children up and to provide them with as much supplementary homeschooling support as she could, Mrs. Posa indefinitely postponed the start of her own profession as a trained nurse. She was a naturally born entrepreneur. She was a biscuit vendor, a maker and seller of ladies' hats, and a prize-winning retailer of a popular brand of pajamas. His father, Paul Posa, was a teacher, principal, and serial builder of schools in the local villages of Mpumalanga. This thanks to his artisan training in carpentry, building and plumbing at Tiger Kloof College, and his training as a teacher, as well as his formation as a devout Christian at the Lutheran College at Botshabelo. Sadly, Posa Sr. passed on in 1970 when he was only 54. Long before the young Posa could either make sense of it, let alone protest against it, he suffered the consequences of apartheid legislation and its antecedents. For example, by 1968, the township of Posa's birth, Mbombela, had been razed to the ground to make way for a mineral refinery. The people were moved to Kanyamazan. an episode that was repeated across apartheid South Africa ever since the promulgation of the 1913 Land Act and the legislation of apartheid, or rather the legalization of apartheid in 1948. When Nakedi Matthew Posa was of school-going age, his parents sent him back to their roots at a farm called Polen near Mokopane. There, he was raised by his grandfather, Matthews Posa Sr., after whom he was named. Matthews Posa Sr. was a devout Christian and a strict disciplinarian. All through his time at Polen Farm, through the Siepabana Lower Primary and Serane Higher Primary, Grandpa Matthews Posa ensured that his grandson was sheltered, was cushioned and shielded from the contamination of South African politics, especially the deadly risks associated with it at the time. But guess what? As soon as Matthew Posa broke free from his grandfather's leash and became a high school student at Maripi in Akonhoek, he dived headlong into the furious river of South African politics, South African student politics, only to come out for air 50-something years later. Posa's political memoir, Witness to Power, narrates that 50-something-year-old journey. It describes its zeniths and its valleys, its highlights and its lowlights, its virtues and its vices, its problems and its promises. If I were to give a title to my brief remarks, I would have called them More Than a Witness. Although the title of the book is Witness to Power, I would have opted for a title More Than a Witness. And let me begin with a quote from the end of the book, where Dr. Posa says, and I quote, "In my own journey, I have tasted both success and failure. After serving my term as Premier of Mpumalanga, I was elected to the NEC of the ANC and later served as Treasurer General for a term. My nomination for Deputy President did not succeed, nor did my later campaign for the presidency of the party. In success and failure, I have learned a few lessons about the nature of politics in South Africa. I stand ready to make a contribution again, to see the Rainbow Nation soar. It is my duty and yours to answer the call, if and when it comes." End of quote. This passage is part of a repeated refrain in this ferocious book of rage and fury. I call it ferocious book of rage and fury. It's not the only thing about it, but that's how I would mainly characterize it. The book begins with a poetic preface designed to depict the author as a witness, all the way back to Mandela's inaugural presidency, a witness to the current GNU presidency of President Ramaphosa. And throughout that preface, he uses the catchphrase, "I was a witness, I witnessed. I was a witness when Mbeki became president and when he built a strong presidency. I was a witness when Zuma was elected. I was a witness." He goes on and on using this linguistic device. However, we must not allow Posa's riveting poetry and alluring self-framing as a witness to power to seduce and intoxicate us completely. Ordinarily, the English noun witness conjures up the image of a curious spectator, a disinterested onlooker, a passive observer, an innocent bystander, or even an accidental eavesdropping outsider. Dr. Posa was none of the above. His is the account of a participant observer rather than what one radio station calls an eyewitness reporter. He himself admits that his story is told from a privileged perch, except that the perch on which he was perched was inside, smack in the middle of the seat of power, some of the times at least. Because surely, the former premier of one of our 9 provinces, the most beautiful of our 9 provinces, if I must say, I know people from Cape Town will complain, but they haven't seen Mpumalanga. The former treasurer of the ruling party, a former member of the NEC, a former contestant for the deputy presidency and presidency of the former ruling power, a former advisor and confidante of Presidents Mandela and Zuma, and if you want, you can throw Mbeki in too, if you go back far enough. He who, when in 1994 Mandela was not sure whom to appoint as his deputy between Mbeki and Ramaphosa, was approached. Mandela approached him for advice to say, who do you think I should appoint between the two? And he advised Mandela accordingly. You can work out what that accordingly means. He who owns up to having been the crafter and mover of the NEC motion to recall Mbeki on 19 September 2008. He owns up to that. That is brave and maybe also dangerous. He who also owns up to having been the one who, upon being approached by former President Zuma for advice, managed to persuade President Zuma to resign in February 2018. He was one of the last people President Zuma spoke to before he decided or was persuaded to resign. He is a long-term legal opinionista, arbiter, and mediator of the ANC at home, underground, and in exile. He writes about his underground activism when he peddled soldiers and guns across the Swazi and Mozambique borders. He speaks about how he hobnobbed with African presidents, including Kwet Masire, Sam Nujoma, Gaddafi, Jibril, and many others. He is an MK commander trained in East Germany who drove around in a Mazda with a Makarov in his car, constantly praying that the police do not find that car, that gun. Where's the Makarov? He who taught Afrikaans to Mozambican spooks and security officers so that they could interpret the messages that were coming from Pretoria or what was going on in Pretoria. He who was both in the engine room and the cockpit of the negotiation process from beginning to end. And of course, I've already referred to him being chair of the Council of the University of South Africa, UNISA, from 2003 to 2015. Such a person may not, in my humble opinion, be accurately or helpfully described as a mere witness to power. I would suggest from page 1 to page 237, which is the last page of this book, Posa's memoir provides overwhelming evidence, and this is me trying to be a lawyer, provides overwhelming evidence to the effect that more than a mere witness to power, he was a wielder, maybe not of all the power, but he was a wielder of some of the power instead of merely being a witness to it. Granted, Dr. Posa being a poet It is possible that the idea of being a witness to power is perhaps meant poetically and metaphorically. It probably is meant to tease, meant to provoke, rather than to denote in any final sense of the word. Indeed, the classical Greek origins of the word witness is in fact the word martyr, from the verb marturia, meaning to bear witness. To bear witness in its original sense is to bear witness to the truth at the risk of torture and death. And insofar as this book accounts to his fearless denunciation of comrade and foe on matters of political principle, Dr. Posa may indeed be regarded as a witness, but in that deeper sense of the word that I have just described from its Greek origin. I suggest that the heart of this book which is a book of 18 chapters. The heart of this book is found in chapters 7, 8, and 9. That's my reading. Chapter 7 is titled Premier of Mpumalanga, and it talks about that experience. Chapter 8 is titled Trouble in Paradise. If you like, you can say Trouble in Mpumalanga Paradise. And chapter 9 is titled Out in the Cold. So I would suggest that these 3 chapters are the heart of the book. These are easily some of the most emotional chapters in the book. Posa's tenure as premier was both the zenith and the nadir of his political innings so far. Chapter 9, Out in the Cold, is particularly emotive. In that chapter, Posa is scathing on Mbeki's Machiavellian leadership style, so that, and I quote, no one could be as tall as he was. If you catch the irony there. Now, earlier I described the book as a ferocious book of rage and fury. The ferocity and the rage of the book is often hidden between the lines, above and beneath and behind, in front of the seemingly benign and beguiling adjectives just before the punchline is delivered. Although he says it's water under the bridge, I think the incident of 24 April 2001, when the then Minister of Police, the late Steve Tshwete, may his soul rest in peace, announced on national television that Posa, Ramaphosa, and Sekgwale were involved in a plot to harm and overthrow President Mbeki, only to withdraw the allegations on 4 December 2001, some 7 months later. I think this has left a deep mark on the conscience and heart of Dr. Posa. And yet, I don't know how he manages. He finds something good to say about everyone in this book. There's not a single person about whom there's nothing good said. There's something good said about Mbeki, lots of good said about him. There's something good said about Zuma. There's something good said about Gaddafi. There's something good said about Botha, the Groot Crocodile. There's something good about everyone. And yet, he is also able to point out what went wrong, when it went wrong, with each of the people who are at the receiving end of his ire. I say it says something good, something nice about everyone, but this is not a book about niceness or niceties. You can feel the smoke, you can smell it, of anger in some of the pages in this book. In a sense, this book is an elegy It's an elegy or maybe a eulogy to a beloved party that lost its way, and a failing, if not a failed state, which started with much promise. The author is devastating in his truthfulness and yet amazing in the generosity he shows to friend and foe alike. Which brings me back to the quote with which I began as I finished my remarks. In my own journey, says Dr. Posa, I have tasted both success and failure. After serving my term as Premier of Mpumalanga, I was elected to the NEC of the ANC and later served as Treasurer General. My nomination for Deputy President did not succeed, nor did my later campaign for the presidency of the party. In success and failure, I have learned a few lessons about the nature of politics in South Africa. I stand ready to make a contribution again to see the Rainbow Nation soar. So clearly, this book is about more than a mere witness to power. Could it be the political manifesto, the book that is, of one who is ready to stand again, to serve? Could this be Dr. Posa's version of Barack Obama's The Audacity of Hope, which was but a thinly disguised election manifesto? Somehow, this book does not read like a goodbye book. My Afrikaans is not very good. But from time to time, Dr. Posa sprinkles the pages with Afrikaans poems and idioms, none of which are translated, as if to say, if you don't understand this, it's your fault. One particular idiom caught my eye, even though I don't quite understand its meaning. And it goes like this. Meng yourself met die semels en die varke vreet jou op. Nou wil ek vra, en die leidende vorm, Dr. Posa, word u deur die varke opgevreet? Thank you very much.
I've never ever heard you say this. Never. It's unique.
Thank you.
This is unbelievable.
I'm done.